So this is going to explain to you pacing and flow in the best way I can possibly do it, which is pretty much of my experience. And if you've seen it in my edits, you'll know I'm dog shit. So we may as well get right into it. I just want you to watch the edit. I want you to watch the edit in full screen, no distractions, no nothing, no eating, no drinking. Okay, you're going to watch the edit. Okay, and once you've watched the edit, I'm going to play it now. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to find a segment. And I'm going to pause. I'm going to explain. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try and do it for both pacing and flow because they are intertwined, just like your syncing and everything else. This first part's relatively calm. He takes up like a beat on each section, in tune with the song, and he's changing the camera to establish what's going on, set the atmosphere of the edit, and he does it in a uniform way. It's all uniform. So yeah, it's calm here. It's calm. So they all relatively take up the same time. They on a note change, the next cinematic changes. You know what I mean? It's nice and calm, and then you have the build up. Okay, so a bit of a pacing change here. It's not very drastic. It's very calm and kind of intense. So it's kind of suspenseful. He hasn't upped the pacing of the edit yet. He's still going kind of slow. Gets a little bit faster here. It's still uniform, it's consistent between each. Each one of these cinematics here generally takes up the same amount of time. Flow-wise, what he's doing here is pretty basic, honestly. He's just, transitioning, and he's got he's got opposing camera movements, but with smooth transitions. So it's smooth. It's smooth, and they contrast each other. So it's visually interesting. See, so he goes from a right to a left to a right, and he's doing it smoothly. And he does it here too, and it starts immediately with a slow movement, pulling back from the player. This is kind of just a smooth, but a little bit harsh transition. Still smooth, but it's just a little bit intense. And he's using glitch transitions here. So with flow in mind, this doesn't make sense as a flow editor, right? Because he's just got these stark transitions. Well, it's smooth. So flow could mean okay, you have a camera moving to the right, and then your next cinematic or your POV has that equal movement, or maybe that's what you think flow is. But for the most part, the reason this flows is because the movement speed this whole clip, it's relative to the movement speed of the cinematic. It's not drastic. If you're matching the speeds, usually it's the exit speeds, but he's got really, really smooth, slow velocity here. That's kind of a bit linear, honestly. He's done it so each point it's like a little blip, which normally you wouldn't do unless you're experienced like he is. I don't recommend a lot of editors do stuff like that unless they know what they're doing. Well, it's just smooth. So he's made sure that it's the same pace. The cinematic isn't too high of a pace for this to not work. See, if the cinematic had a lot of movement, going very fast, it would be a little bit jarring probably, unless you did it correctly. Or actually, a better example I think is if this clip had a lot of exit movement. So let's say it kind of starts out fast, it kind of goes slow, and then it ramps up to fast. If he did that and then came to this, it might not work. These flow really nice. He's kind of using a starts out fast, goes to slow transition. That's what he does for each of them. Fast, slow, and then it transitions to the next one. This one he does a little bit of a reverse thing, and this kind of pulls you in. So pulls you in, and then you're kind of pulled into the POV almost. Is the way I see it. There you go again with the very subtle syncing. That's really good right there. So he's got it's so slight on this, so slight. He gets a very a bit of movement, and it's just fast enough right here. Just for a couple frames, you notice it, and this shot here, he's got the blur going on, and it's still it's still pretty slow, but he's done it so it's like a very intense little bit with enough movement, and then it slows down. So it's intense, and that's what you want. That's how it flows. If it was say really slow, it wouldn't have any impact to it, and so it would flow poorly. So he's got impact here, and it doesn't take away from the pacing of the edit. It doesn't feel out of place. You see here, he's gone for a traditional transition. He's done it twice, changing camera angles. Each of these doesn't need a very impactful speed ramp here. It's the same shot, but he's using different camera angles. This is the next changing pacing here. So I don't even think he has. Does he have a ramp here? No, it doesn't. It's the same. So this clip's kind of fast, and he's using the intensity of that glitch, and he's using the whoosh sound effects to make this a little bit intense, and he does it again there. So normally what you would do to get this to be intense is you'd have a lot of movement, then really slow. You'd have really aggressive velocity. That's what that is, really aggressive. But instead of that, he's kind of just, he doesn't need that much movement, because the effects he's got on here and the whoosh sound effects, they really do it for him. He doesn't have to screw with the velocity to do it. He's using other ways to make it work. Here we go, it slows down again. And the reload's it's a little bit intense with the glitch effects. This is a good example here. It's intense, but it's still in line. It's not too much, it's not too little. This is where it really changes up here. This is probably his most, as this edit escalates, it gets a little bit more extreme. So that's this is the biggest change in pacing up until now. As the song slowly gets more intense, as edit gets more intense. And each movement, as it gets harsher, the resulting movement after is harsher. And he's made sure that each piece of the puzzle fits. The speed from one to another is relative. That makes it smooth, it makes it flow. That's how he's making it flow. And if he wants to go from fast to slow, he gives it breathing room. So he wants to go fast, so he lets it, a lot of impact here. He's mainly using effects to carry this away, not just his velocity. His velocity is quite harsh here, but it really slows down instantly, and then he's back into the really smooth kind of. Yeah, so this edit's carried a lot by the effects here, to give away what he wants the viewer to feel from it. Another change in the pacing here. This time he's using the vocals. Kind of the docile echoes on here, and then he goes things you don't know for the time of these shots. And suspense, and he's holding the suspense on that grungy guitar noise in the background. Open Your Eyes is the timing for this one. So yeah, this is generally this is a masterful example of pacing. If there's any edit to look to, it's this one. Because his pacing is 100% carrying the edit. He keeps everything kind of muted and in line with the song, You can see it kind of only calms down like when the song calms down. But it goes back to being intense once the song's back in action. And you can it's just not linear at all. It's not linear. So he's constantly choosing different elements of the song, and he probably had a lot of trial and error as well, trying to find each of these points to sync to. When should the cinematic come in, or maybe he had it storyboarded. So storyboarding, if you're recording your own clips, is probably the best way to do it. It's just to know your footage and then imagine it in your mind to like different elements of the song. You don't want to just have it on like every beat that something happens. You want to like time it to the vocals, time it to the instruments, time it to the beats. And you can see another tip on flow here. So his cinematics don't necessarily flow in like a traditional way. They're more like harsh cuts. I guess the best example of like, I guess you could say is traditional flow is here. So the cinematic moves into the POV. That's how he's got it to flow like that. And then we get like a little bit traditional here. Like a comes out of him, goes back into him, and it matches the camera movement of that cinematic that comes after. And comes into him. And then, it flies past him. And then into him, and this one kind of pulls out. It's like kind of in, out movement. Same there. Out, in. Your footage doesn't necessarily have a lack of flow because you have stark transitions like this one. These work because the footage is like relative speed, and it's consistent. You want consistency. Consistency is key. Unless you're like using like an element in the song to have like some intensity, you kind of want consistency between your footage. Getting variation, I think, is down the line because it's just muscle memory. Talking about variation. It's all just muscle memory with your brain, of course, not with your muscles. You'll just know. You just get to a point where you just know. You play the edit back and you just know. For your pacing, you should be able to, I guess, if you put gunshots out, like say you have your gunshots on your song, if you were to close your eyes and you wouldn't see the footage, if you play through it, does each shot sound like natural? Like, do you feel like it's too forced, or is it not forced? Everything combines for flow, not just like what your cinematics are doing or your effects. Like everything has to combine. So you can get away with like relatively static shots working through use of sound effects and like, consistency between your shots, as seen here in this edit. It's literally, he's just got different camera angles of the same thing. Really, honestly, I just recommend just go watch these edits and try to understand the rhythm of the song and the edit. Find the little details the editor has used in the song to sync to, and see how they've done it. Everything's based on the song. The song is your whole basis for your pacing and your flow. It's not the footage. It's the song. You can be too fast for a song. You can be too slow for a song, and you can always just be too basic for a song. You can have a bunch of interesting parts in the song and you just decide to go off the beats. So yeah, it's just experiment, watch a lot of edits, try to understand what the editor has used, and hopefully this will help you understand pacing and flow better. That's all.